Welcome to the TheGripPodcast. I'm your host, Matthew Sky Osborne. Thank you for coming back and listening. We're back this week again with my gracious co-host, Leah. We're going to call it here in a second. We're going to go ahead and get a few things out the way. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. We're on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, Podbean, and you can follow us on Instagram at The Grip Podcast and Facebook at The Grip Podcast. And I'm on Twitter as Matthew Sky Oz, O-Z. Don't do a whole lot of posting on Twitter. If you listen to the podcast, you heard me, complain about that. We're trying to grow the podcast. So if you're listening to the podcast and you enjoy it, please share it on your social media. Tell a friend about it. You're welcome to repost anything that I post. I don't care; it doesn't bother me. We want to, share the conversations we have, because we do feel that what we're talking about are very important things, and they would better humankind, and help people learn and improve and become better human beings. You can also get your Be Humane wristbands at skyent.live, L-I-V-E. They're $5. And I think $1 shipping, so $6 total. The point of the Be Humane wristband is for you to wear it and it to be a conversation starter. Hey, what's that? This is my Be Humane wristband. What does that mean? And you get to tell them what your Be Humane issue is, whether that's police brutality, racial injustice, systematic racism, civil rights, gay rights, anything, global warming, being humane to animals. It's supposed to be a conversation starter. It doesn't have to be one thing. It could be whatever your Be Humane issue is. All right. Hope you enjoyed that. I really do like this song. I love Will Smith's music. I am a fan. I'm glad this came up and not something embarrassing. For those of you who don't know, I do the playlist shuffle at the beginning of the podcast now, which is basically I go into a playlist I have and hit shuffle, and whatever comes up, comes up. And it's supposed to be really revealing and, kind of some insight into music I'm listening to. I'd do this with Leah if I could get her playlist over the phone, but I can't yet. Oh, just transition right into another song. So that's that. Let me fade this out, and we're going to go ahead and call Leah and get this show on the road. Just a second here. Hope everybody's having a good Sunday. It is the month of March. I'm going to go see Captain Marvel later today. I'm a big comic book fan, if those of you don't know. More DC than Marvel. So that's that. I can still enjoy Marvel movies for what they are. Just a good time. Good storytelling. You know what I'm saying? I know what I'm saying. But do you know what I'm saying? Daylight saving times.
Hello.
Good morning.
Morning. How's it going?
It's going good. I just got an alert on my computer that said daylight savings time tomorrow. I did not know that.
Is it really?
Really, yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Right? I mean, I know your phone will automatically, update.
Yeah.
But was it spring forward, fall back?
Yes.
So
a lot of people have not heard that.
Oh, so you know
that's
that.
how I keep it straight.
Yeah, spring forward, fall back. So we are
one of many gems I have to offer.
Yeah. So we're moving an hour forward tomorrow?
Yeah.
So what, it would be 10.
So we lose an hour.
Lose an hour. That's
always sad over that.
I always hate that, right?
I'm always sad over that 1 hour.
I know.
Just down the drain.
Yeah, but we're so screwed up. I don't know how long this was going on, our whole lives, obviously.
Right.
I lost that hour. Did you? I mean, you did, but
But in the grand scheme of things, I
Yeah.
think you're gonna be fine.
But you always back when you get that spring forward fall back, when you get that extra hour in the fall, doesn't it just feel like you just won something?
Yes. Like you defied, I don't know, something, how the universe works.
Yeah. Like, yeah, got you.
What now?
Got that hour.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm really proud of myself, man. I really got this, I think, intro thing down. When you go back and listen to it, you'll hear it. I'm like, yeah,
Yay.
man. I feel real organized, calling you right on the dot.
Is this a new feeling?
It just feels good.
Well, congratulations.
And I feel like I ruin it every time I talk about it, Like, I had this, super nice professional intro, and then I go over here and rant about it.
Me rocking it.
Doing such a great job. Like, I thought this was this a professional podcast? What is this?
Oh my gosh.
That's what everyone wanted to
funny.
be. Right.
I'll talk about my accomplishments, however large or small, for as long as I want to.
Yeah. Hey, something else funny, real quick, is I want to change the cover. We're recording, by the way. I know.
Yes.
I know you just assumed that. Obviously, Matt. I'm thinking about changing the cover of the podcast again because it feels so weird because it just obviously started out with me, and so you got my big face plastered on there, and then like this tiny picture of you there. I'm just like, yo, that doesn't feel right.
Well, I mean, it's just for now. So
I'm just like,
get some photos.
Maybe you could call me a feminist. My wife does sometimes, and I'm like, yo, man, we're equal, right?
We should have an equal amount of the photo,
right? I'm just like this giant.
Or she should have more to balance things out.
Ooh. Hey, but whoa, but I'm black. So I get a little back?
It's intersectionality wars. Who's gonna win?
And you're like, but I'm Chinese. I have Chinese. So, and then the rope goes back your way a little bit. I'm like, whoa, but I was born in
Don't make me play this game, Matt.
I was born in this class of society. So I had this much money growing up.
Blue collar. What now?
But I was poor. But
oh my gosh.
We could do that all day.
They call that the oppression Olympics,
the
right?
Oppression
when people
Olympics.
do that for real, are trying to one up each other. Okay. We don't need to play the oppression Olympics here.
Funny, I've never heard that.
Oh my gosh, we'll battle out for the square inches of the photo later. Take this up later.
Well, I did come up with something, and I'll send it to you later. Just an idea.
Awesome.
And that's that. Because in my head, I'm like, this podcast is gonna take off, and we're gonna travel around the United States and do lectures and talk about this stuff at colleges, and they're gonna have our podcast photo up there, and it's gonna be this giant picture of me and this little picture of you. And
so I gotta fix this before I get blasted.
Because I'm gonna be up there, and I can just imagine all the women just sitting there Matthew, so you're this Mr. Be Humane guy in this. Why is your picture so big?
You call yourself a feminist, huh?
Right.
Black Twitter's gonna drag your ass.
Yeah.
You're not even on Twitter.
Oh man.
They're just gonna.
Black Twitter's gonna tear me up. That's funny, about Black Twitter too.
I love Black Twitter.
They're gonna tear me up, man. Not just gonna. This you know what? This is a great segue into our conversation. Because Black Twitter's gonna
hashtag Black Twitter dragging.
Black Twitter's gonna tear me up for a number of reasons, and they're all stereotypical. But don't.
Oh my gosh, too funny. I'm crying already. What, 5 minutes into this? I was thinking this morning, I've had this hacking cough all week. I was like, I know this is going to be Matt's gonna have me cracking up on this episode, and I just hope that I don't like see, here it comes, go into this like hacking cough. So I'm gonna try really hard.
Yeah,
But
and your
I can't
camera's on the
promise.
way too.
I know, right? I probably should have brought my bag of cough drops over here. That's actually not a bad idea.
Yeah.
In case I go into a fit of coughing.
Yeah.
Just warning everyone.
Yeah. So
oh my gosh.
Maybe this will be a lighter episode. Well, it kind of feels that way already. Where how'd you say? I don't even know. We didn't really come up with a like title for it, but we were going to talk about. We've been talking about racial fetishes and racial stereotypes, sexual stereotypes for like the last 3 episodes, kind of.
Right.
And then we were talking the other day, like you were saying, and like, hey, why don't we share our personal experiences?
Right, because you mentioned there were a lot of things that you had personal experiences with that kind of came to mind in our last episode that you didn't share, partially because you were being super feminist and letting me like talk. No.
Yeah, I felt like you had things to say.
I always have things to say.
Like a typical woman.
You gotta just get in there. But yeah, so we were like, should we talk about these personal experiences? And I was like, yeah, let's do this. Who doesn't like to hear people's, dating stories / personal experiences? And we were talking about how, I think sometimes people might hear, especially white folks that aren't familiar with some of these ideas that we're talking about, or not very familiar, might want to put these things like, like someone being racially fetishized, put them into this category of, well, that only happens, that happens rarely, or that's only like extreme cases or something, whereas really these things are operating pretty like, I don't know, they're pretty common.
Yeah, it's real common.
And so, and so I think we were just talking about how us talking about our experiences might kind of bring it home to people that these things are a lot more common than maybe we would want to think that they are. So
yeah, and for me, this is going to be reminiscing.
I know
a whole lot. Like you're still kind of in the dating scene, right?
Yeah, I am.
So this is like live. This is like what's happening, kind of. I mean, I'm obviously you're going to talk about some things in the past, but you're still out there.
Right.
It's like it's happening.
It's happening.
And like
fresh off the press.
I kind of live vicariously through some of my friends who still date, and like I've even offered to be like, hey, can I be your wingman? Like let me come out with you, because like I loved dating. Like, well, you know what? I say that now because you always rewrite history, or at least I always do in my head. Like I kind of romanticize my past thoughts sometimes. I'm like, you know what? I remember being single, and like, man, I wish I was in a relationship.
Right.
But then when
you're in a relationship, you're like, oh, dating was so fun.
Oh, dating was awesome. Like, no, it wasn't, man. Like, I remember being like miserable a lot, and I'm sure this is not what's happening to you. Okay.
No, I mean, there are parts of it that can be fun, but I would say for the most part, it's really frustrating.
Yeah,
you get like these really shitty experiences, and you get disappointed. You think something has potential, and then somebody gets crazy on you, and you're like, well, fuck that one, another one down the tube, so it is. I mean, there is a lot of there's excitement, but there's a lot of frustration too.
Can you clip my toenails later, Leah? I'd really appreciate that.
My friends have so been teasing me about that.
Is that what he said?
Give me a manicure.
Yeah, give me a manicure.
Right?
Why? I mean, you're Chinese. That's what you do, right?
You think these folks are like cool, they're whatever, have these successful careers, and then they come out with shit like that, and you're like, my cousin always says, swerve.
Oh.
Swerve.
Okay.
Like, miss that one, that accident. And so anyways, so I mean, there is excitement, but there's definitely a whole lot of just stupidity that goes along with it too. And I think especially as I get older, it's not like when I was in my 20s, the the scene changes the older you get, I think. So,
Oh,
which that's a
absolutely.
whole nother topic for another podcast. But
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like the older I get, the more weird situations that I encounter.
Yeah.
So,
So like I think just okay, let me say this for the record for everybody listening. So my wife knows about all these stories. So like I'm not going to be saying anything here like, oh, I mean, like his wife, yeah, my wife knows everything. Okay? I told her she knows everything about me. And the funny thing about it is me and my wife were really good friends before we got together and started, dating or whatever. And so she was literally like my best friend. So I told her everything that was
aw,
happening and like
yeah.
dating and all my story, like everything. And so like when we started dating, I would try to retract some of the things I said,
Stop it.
and she was like, "No, you can't rewrite history now."
Trying that with a damn lawyer. Who do you think you
Right?
are?
She's like, "Nah, man, you told me about that stuff." I'm like, "I
Ah.
did, didn't I?"
Oh my gosh. That's awesome that you guys were such great friends first. I mean, I think that's, ideally for me anyways, like that's how an awesome relationship would start, right? Where you are just friends
Oh yeah.
and nobody's trying to impress anyone else or, you're
Yeah,
just like being who you are.
not to get corny, but like that's probably one of the main reasons we ended up together because we both, for the first times in our lives, felt like we could be ourselves, and that's
Right.
like there was no show. Like they say, when you go out, you put your best foot forward. You hide things. Like I always felt like I could be myself, and I didn't have to hide all my weird like quirks and things that my hang up, just whatever it was. I could just let it just fly.
Because she already knew it. She
Right.
already knew she was still wanted to be with you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I've gotten more
Yeah.
comfortable as I gotten older with all my little hangups and stuff. Like for example, I'm a germaphobe. So like I carry a pack of handy wipes with me everywhere I go.
That's
And
awesome.
people know this. Like Matt, they're like, Matt, you got a handy wipe if they ever need one. Yeah, I'm like, here you go.
You're like, see, you mock me, and yet here you are in need of my
Need of my
services.
services.
Who's winning now?
Right. So I don't know how you kind of want to start this. I was thinking like because my early dating experiences were more entertaining than like later in life.
Okay.
Or maybe not more entertaining, like all the like stereotypical things that we were perpetuating was fun for us. And
Okay.
as I got older, then like you mature and you're like hey, that thing was wrong or this that, and life starts to change and you think about things differently and things become more combative. Like I don't know.
Do you want to walk us through that? Do you want to walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah. So okay. So this is I'm just gonna have to get over myself here. Um, I dated a lot. I was telling you this on the phone.
Yeah.
I dated a lot, and by a lot I mean a lot. Like
Like, I don't think you understand what I mean when I say a lot.
a lot. Now, and I'll put this out there. That doesn't mean I was sleeping with every woman I dated. Okay, I don't want that to be the thinking there.
Yeah.
I liked women, and I like women. I still like. I love my wife. Okay, and I've always gotten along with women better than men, and
Okay. Interesting.
I don't know why. I just have, and I do think as I got older, I kind of learned that guys didn't like me so much because I was good with women,
Yeah.
and jealousy or whatever it was. And I'll go out there and say this: from what people have told me, the word on the street is I'm an okay looking guy. And I didn't know that at first. And once I found that out, I obviously abused that and
Okay.
used that to my advantage. And did a lot, and it gave me more confidence, obviously,
Yeah.
to deal with women. And so I I just dated who I liked or went out with who I liked. And as you move through that experience, you these things start to kind of seep in, like we talked about the last episode. Like I had a group of black friends, and like I was saying, we would say that if they're not light or white, they ain't right.
Yeah.
And like when you're young, you want to fit in and you want to be cool,
Right.
And so I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Word, like truth. Like, I don't know what I'm talking about. And I dated a lot of women. And like, as you kind of move through that world, you start to learn about like some of the stereotypes and things that like we always knew, for example, and forgive me if I offend anybody. That's not my intention with any of this. Like we knew that white women fantasized, most white women that we met fantasized about black men.
Okay.
And we were like, we used that to our advantage.
So wait, okay, hold on for a second. So
Yeah.
how did you tell us how you knew that? Would people make comments? You just picked up on it?
You could see it. Like I can't speak for the other guys, but I was always aware of when I thought a woman was into me. And I didn't use that. Like that's just being observant, I guess. I don't know. And so I
Yeah.
would see the way the white girls would look at us.
Yeah.
And my mom always told me people's eyes are the keys to their soul, or windows to their soul, and people's
Right.
eyes never lie. And so I would see it, and that's the only best way I could describe it is I would see the way they would watch us and they would hang around us, and body language I think speaks volume. I always say to myself and to people who know me, I'm like, people communicate with you even when they're not talking. People communicate all the time. People
Sure.
communicate with body language. They communicate with things they say, things they don't say. I'm like, people are always communicating, whether they know it or not. Even when they don't know it, they're communicating.
Right.
Right.
But you felt like that interest that was being expressed, that feeling coming from white women was different than from other women who were interested in you?
Yeah, like so the black girls, there were fights. Because the black women in our school, this is in high school. I'm talking like this is between 9th and 12th grade.
Okay.
And the black girls didn't like a lot of the white girls because of the obvious reasons. They were, stealing the black men, if you will.
Yeah.
And so there was one scenario where there was this black girl I dated for some time on and off throughout high school. And I think our senior year, I don't know what she was doing, playing hard to get or whatever. So I was like, yeah, whatever. I moved on. And I started dating this white girl. And when I did that, she got real upset. And that was one of the fights that broke out. And I was like sitting back, like laughing.
Oh,
I'm
no.
like hitting on my boys, and they're like, yeah, look, they fighting over me, man. But then like, I don't know at that age, like what's really playing out there, because like when I
Right.
think back about it, it wasn't just that black girl, it was her whole crew. And they went after the white girls.
Right.
And it was literally just like a black and white thing. And at that age, I had no idea what that was.
What was underlying that?
Yeah, all the underlying stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I had no idea how black women felt.
Right. Like the broader context.
Right.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I don't really know where I was going with that, but
You were talking about how white women, like knowing that women were interested in you, but particularly white women.
yeah. And we use that to our advantage. And like, I would say things, stupid things to white girls, like, what they say about black men, we packing,
Yeah.
And I would use those like corny lines as a kid,
Yeah.
to pick up white girls.
Right. Like
And
playing on those
stereotypes.
stereotypes and those fetishes, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would use that to my advantage, and I'm sure they did, and that was all wrong and what it was. So as I got older, obviously you stop doing that and you become more mature. But I do want to I wanted to say that me personally, I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for anybody else. I dated all women. I dated all races, or I attempted, like I was saying in our last conversation, I attempted to date all races and cultures, and I didn't discriminate. And one of the awful lines I had when I was young was I only discriminated against ugly. I was a bad kid, man. So personally, I didn't care what you were.
Yeah.
I didn't care if you were white, black, Asian, mixed. It didn't matter. But we did kind of the lighter
Here it
white
comes.
thing.
Yeah.
We loved mixed girls. We thought
knew that's where you were going.
Yeah, we thought they were like angels sent from heaven. You know what I mean? Because it was just, I hate to say it, but like, damn it, like, from what I remember, they were the most beautiful girls. When we were kids, we were always like, they're so pretty.
But isn't a lot of that, because as I was thinking back on this, I was thinking of my first week of college, and I didn't know about the like mixed girl fetish thing.
Yeah.
And I remember my first week, my freshman year, some dude, we were in like freshman orientation or something, coming up and sitting by me, and all of a sudden, what comes out of his mouth? After he asks about my background, quote unquote, right? And he says, mixed girls are the prettiest. And I was like, haha, thank you. Like, I didn't know, but I, at that time, didn't know the context behind that. And I was just like, okay, that's weird. Like, you're not even, I mean, he was talking about me
Yeah.
in a like sideways kind of way, but to put us all in this category, so yeah, but like, don't you think part of that though is just it's exotification, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And like,
because I'm like, are we really the mixed girl? I mean, I'm throwing
No.
myself in that category, but are we really the pretty? I don't think so.
no, anybody can be.
I think it's that our numbers are in general smaller, and so we just, and depending on the particular mix, we're quote unquote more rare, and so it's just an exotification thing. Like, I don't see someone who looks like you as often, type of thing. Now, I know that's a little different with as far as numbers with like a black white mix, because historically, of the history there. But go ahead.
No, you're right. I was thinking that like they were rare.
Yeah.
We didn't see a whole lot of them, and when we did, we lost our minds. They were always. It was so bad. And let me just say for the record that, in my personal opinion and belief, beauty is more than physical. It's who you are, and all that stuff that you may say is ridiculous or corny.
Please refer to Matt, the grown-up Matt's documentary, #Real Beauty.
Yeah, there you go. Nice.
For his current views on women and their beauty.
Yeah, I don't want this to get twisted in any kind of way. That is not what I think real beauty is. But like I said, as a kid, they were so rare, we lost our minds. And I'm talking like any mix. Like, I remember one girl who was black and Hispanic. There was I think, what was she? I think she was Korean and white or something. But it was any mix. We just lost our minds, and we thought that I remember personally being kind of confused about mixed marriages. Like, I had one friend, obviously won't say his name, had a black dad and a white mom.
Okay.
And I remember seeing that as a kid, and I was like, "That's you can do that?" Like,
That's a thing?
because you don't know until you're exposed to something, things that you might
Right.
think are normal and common. Like, I hadn't seen it before, and I was like, "That's so weird."
Right. Because this is in the Midwest, right?
Yeah, yeah. This is Ohio. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was like, "That's so weird," because I don't think I saw that anywhere as a
Right.
kid,
Yeah.
and
No,
that
that
was
makes sense.
yeah, that was the one. And man, that guy's sister, like, everybody wanted to date her, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and the women love the guys. Like, so I don't know how that works. I can't speak from a women's perspective, but man, the women love those guys. He had a brother.
Yeah.
Man, like they were like people just like worship them for all the wrong
Ah,
reasons.
this is so like interesting for me to hear from, like a teenage guy's perspective,
Yeah.
because I don't know if we've talked about this. I was like super sheltered,
Mm-hmm.
like super duper sheltered. I was homeschooled. So I wasn't even in like
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't get exposed to like we weren't allowed to date till we were out of college. I mean, like super duper sheltered growing up. And so, I wasn't aware of like any of, I was just super naive.
Yeah.
And so then, I'm talking about like my first week of my freshman year of college, right? I'm getting hit with with men coming at me from this place, and I have no idea what's going on, right? Like, I don't even know how to date, much less understand
Like,
like
what are you
all
saying
these
to me?
other dynamics happening. So it would just be like awkward laughter and like a weird look, and like I don't know what's happening. Okay, nice to meet you. Bye,
Yeah.
bye. You know, um, but it's interesting, like the whole, since you're talking about mixed mixed girls, and I am mixed,
Yeah.
like that's something that I feel like a lot of the white men I've dated over the years, and I'm sure this is not exclusive to white men, but that's where I feel like I've experienced this the most, is this feeling that I'm being exotified. Like it's like they have no understanding, or little understanding of culture, right? The fact that like if you're going to date me, this is going to be it's not just interracial. This is going to be an intercultural relationship. Like we are from different cultures. Like I was raised by my Chinese mother, like with all that, yes, like I was raised in the US, but I was still raised by her with all the norms and culture of a Chinese woman, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, but I get these guys who I think, um, look at me and they're like, ooh, either they think I'm pretty, whatever, but, or they're exotifying me.
Did white guys hit on you?
Oh
Is
my
that what you're saying?
gosh. Yeah, like
Okay.
all the time. But it's like they think I'm just like like I get this feeling they think I'm like exotic light, like diet. Like
Uh,
like they can date me, and yeah, like maybe it's kind of interracial, but I'm like half white, and then my other piece is Asian, which a lot of people try to put that in the category of like it's like honorary whiteness or close to whiteness. So they think they're going to date me and they're going to get all the like exotic looks of someone who's not white,
I
but they
see.
have no clue about navigating an interracial, intercultural relationship. I don't even think some of them knew they were in that, because it's like, oh, we're all American. She's Americanized. And I'm like, I would always joke with people like, okay, you can think that, but try to date me. You'll see the cultural differences start to come out like big time, like when
Yeah.
you date me. But I don't think a lot of them even knew that they were getting into an intercultural, like the cultural part. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I was
So,
curious about that. Go ahead.
or like seeing me as I'm like an easier option, right? Like, so they want to date a woman of color, but it's not going to be like dating a black woman, or it's not going to be like dating a Latina, right? That the cultural differences are not really going to be there.
Well, that was my
Because
next thing was the white guys in my school only dated white women. They didn't
Right.
date any of the black girls or the mixed girls. There's always an exception to that rule. Obviously, there was one
Right.
guy who dated the black girl, one white guy who dated the black girl, and
Once.
he ended up marrying her. You know,
Okay.
that was like his high school
Okay.
sweetheart.
Okay.
But yeah, the white guys didn't do that.
Yeah.
But I don't know why, but the black guys, like, we felt for whatever reason, like, freedom and liberty to, like, it's all for us. Like, we can all.
You're like, better for us.
Yeah, and I can't tell you what that was, but I think it kind of plays back into maybe what you were saying earlier, maybe like like fetishizing black men. I don't know, like it seemed like all women were interested in us, white, black, mixed, but not Asian.
But not Asian.
And that's the segue. That's a perfect segue because, like I was saying on the phone with you the other day, that was like the one, like I could never, like I never got to really date Asian women, and that's because that's not for lack of trying.
Yeah. Which, like I told you the other day, that doesn't really surprise me.
Yeah.
Sadly.
I had one date with one Asian, like I was telling you, I can't remember what she was specifically, and I don't mean disrespectful. I'm not just blanketing on these. I don't know what her background was, so I just say Asian.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't remember what she was specifically, but I had one date with her and it was awful. Like we went bowling, she wouldn't talk to me. I was like, "Why are you here?"
Oh man, yeah, that's super awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like we were talking about, sadly that doesn't surprise me because of all the, anti-blackness in Asian, and again, I'm speaking generally, but in Asian communities is like, it's bad. Anti-blackness I think is in all communities to some degree, right? It's global, it's around the world, it's in every community. Like that's how pervasive white supremacy is. But I think I see that. I think I see that. I do see that.
But what
often.
was it like? What
what's
was
behind
it?
that?
What was the anti? Like what was the conversation? What was the stereotype? What was like being shared? About us?
It's the stereotype. It's all the worst stereotypes of black folks that Asian folks have internalized, right? That black folks are lazy and criminal and don't value education and disrespectful, and that it is internalized even in, like I said, it's global. Like even in Asian folks who are like live in Asia before they even, if they migrate here, like before they even migrate here, that is being ingrained in folks, through movies, through news, like the rest of the world. A lot of the rest of the world really follows, what I'm saying, the U.S. and what's going on here and our Hollywood, right? Our news. Because of the U.S.'s like influence and our place in the hierarchy of countries, right? We're one of the most powerful nations in the world currently. I don't think it's always going to be that way. And so, that was something that always shocked me. Like when I was living in South Africa, I was like, damn, like I saw the influence all around me. Books, movies, TV shows. And so people are internalizing. It's all the same shit that people here internalize.
Okay.
Right? But they're internalizing that across the world. And so, and I think a lot of those things that I mentioned, those stereotypes, go against some of the most deeply ingrained, and again, I'm speaking very, very broadly here, but the most deeply ingrained, quote unquote, like Asian values, right? There's a high emphasis in most Asian cultures on respecting elders. That's huge, and valuing education and, there's kind of this, don't stand out, like there's a lot of like Chinese proverbs and stuff that talk about, because Asia those are communal societies, not individualistic societies. So in communal societies, your behavior isn't just about you and what's best for you, right? There's a huge emphasis on how this impacts your family and the community. And so one of those things is not standing out, right? Being obedient, being just getting along, whatever the expectations are. You just do what you need to do to get along. And so I think all that's being ingrained in folks, and they're internalizing that anti-Black bias, and that go ahead.
Right. So I can't believe I forgot this. There was actually a Korean girl. I think she was from South Korea. That I dated. I believe she was mixed.
Okay.
She was, I think, South Korean and white, if you will. And I dated her for a short period of time. I can't believe I forgot about her. Like I said, there's a lot of women.
I mean, there's so many. She got lost in the shuffle.
She was really pretty, you know. I'm going to hell. And so I dated her on and off for some time, and it wasn't anything substantial. I just thought she was pretty. We had nothing in common, you know, because I remember going out to eat with her one time, and she was like, started spouting off all these like super Republican points of view.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what she said specifically, but she said something about black guys or black men or black culture. And I was sitting there like, what?
Yeah.
And we're at this restaurant. I'm sitting across the table from her, and I was like, but, you know, I'm here with you. And it was that thing again.
Of you're different than
you're
everyone
different,
else. Yeah.
Matt. And I was like, that's like one of the first times that happened to me, that was said to me. And I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
Like at that age, I was probably like 22 or something.
Yeah.
And maybe even younger than that, 21, 20. And I didn't know what to do with that. I was like, oh, maybe I am different. Like I didn't know what to do with it.
Thank you. Right. No,
you know, it was foul. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, maybe I am different, but I'm still black. And I never met her family, by the way.
Yeah, right.
You know, I
Yeah.
think no, I don't think I ever met her family. I was like, maybe I met her brother once. But yeah, it obviously didn't work out.
You know, this is. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's really it. I just said
Okay.
I forgot about her, and it didn't work out. She was super Republican with her views, and when I say that is just I'm not to blanket Republicans, but the stereotypical narrative of Republicans is everything's
Right.
pro-white, and
Right.
anything not white is wrong, and or whatever it is, lazy, criminal, just all
Right.
that bullshit.
Sure. Well, and I think another thing we need to do a whole. I know I say this all the time. I sound like a broken record, but we need to do a whole. I mean, I think it's on our list to do a podcast on this too, like anti-Blackness in Asian communities. But since we're talking about this, I won't go into the full thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think another piece of that is, not for. I wouldn't say for all Asian Americans, but I think there is more of a bend in Asian American communities, right, to kind of take the route of like survival through assimilation, right? Like,
Okay.
And I think that's part of the kind of like staying quiet, keep your head down, right? Just try to fit in.
Republican,
right? Well, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah, try to fit in, which really means kind of like blend into whiteness, right? That's really what
Okay.
that translates into. And I'm not saying this is all Asian Americans, but I do think in general, there's been more of that, like that approach to survival, or however you want to frame that. Whereas for Black folks, obviously, like how Black folks ended up here is very different narrative than how a lot of Asian folks ended up in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like kidnapping and enslavement versus migration. I mean, there were a lot of Asian folks that came as like laborers and like in some probably indentured servitude form too, but still very different ways of arriving in the US. And so I think, I guess in my head, I'm just contrasting Asian folks who migrate here, looking for a better life. And therefore, of course, they're going to be more along the lines of assimilating and seeing the US as like this land of opportunity, that I'm grateful for kind of thing, versus like how Black folks arrived in the US through what I mentioned, kidnapping, enslavement, and we're here and we're fighting for our rights. And so I think that, there's a huge difference between those historical narratives and that approach. And I think Asians maybe, like look down on Black folks sometimes, for being loud and, I'm obviously saying this in quote unquote loud or violent or angry, or why can't you just like
stereotypes
try to like, why you're always protesting and causing trouble? Like, why can't you just like get along or be grateful for what you have here? Or, that kind of thing. And there's also, I don't want to forget this point. I mean, white folks and white supremacy has intentionally driven wedges between Asian and Black communities, like the divide and conquer thing, right? Like the whole, I don't know if you're familiar with the whole model minority. I don't want to get too far on this bunny trail, but the whole model minority myth that emerged, I think in the 60s or 70s, I think 60s, I want to say. I could be a little off on my time frame there, but are you familiar with the model minority myth about Asians?
No.
So it's this myth that Asians are the model minority, right? Like Asian folks have been able to be successful and become wealthy and assimilate. How come the rest of you people of color can't do that? Mm-hmm. But that was like a myth that was created. And it's not even true. Like there are a lot of Asians who are not doing well, like in school, and not doing well financially. I think especially Southeast Asians in this country, but other Asian ethnic groups as well. But that was a myth specifically created to divide communities of color and to further oppress Black folks, right? To hold up Asians like, look, they can do it. What's wrong with y'all?
Yeah.
Right. And so there's all of that is playing into this too, where Asians are kind of being played and don't realize that this is another tool and tactic of white supremacy. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So this is a side note that is related but unrelated that I always, and you mentioned it, and it's I think it's somewhat true. And this is my understanding. This is my research. I'm not asking you to co-sign this, okay? But this is a battle that I've been kind of fighting here recently. Is the idea that all Black folks have come here through slavery. I do think it's one of those things that the winners write the history.
Sure.
Okay. And I've done a lot of independent research as far as learning that all Black people did not come here through slavery. There's evidence and records and proof that we were here before Columbus was here, and that Africans were trading over here with Indians.
I mean, this is definitely not an area I've researched, but I don't have any issue saying, like, knowing what I know about migration to this country. I don't have any problem saying, yeah, that's probably, I believe you. There's all kinds of migration patterns, like we know the broadest narratives.
Yeah.
But there's all kinds of migration patterns in all ethnic groups that don't fit into those narratives.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Exactly. Like the idea is that Black people were these like uncivilized, animal like people over in Africa, and then the whites came and got us and then like taught us. That's all bullshit.
Domesticated, right?
Yeah, that's my research. Like I said, I know that's not taught anywhere.
but you get the same narrative. I'm so glad you brought that up, though. You get the same narrative on the African continent. That like
Yes.
the history of Africa started with the enslavement of African folks. Hell no. There were like major civilizations and inventions and like there was all kinds of stuff, activity
Irrigation.
and yeah, like stuff going on prior to like the slave trade beginning, right? And but that's where whiteness decides to start the narrative, right? Because that's yeah. Anyway, so yeah,
I'm saying, I don't want to go down that rabbit. We can do that later, but I wanted to bring that up real brief because I don't want to perpetuate that stereotype.
Yes,
I don't even know if that would be a stereotype. It's somewhat true. I mean, some of us did, obviously, get here through slavery.
No, but I think that's a really good point. I'm really glad that you brought that up.
And one of the things,
really glad you brought that up.
One of the things that that's one of the lessons I wanted to say about that real quick was, they found a mummy, somewhere in Africa that I think was dated like 1,000 years or something before Columbus got here, and the mummy had cocaine.
Wow.
In the tomb, and my understanding is that cocaine only grows in South America.
Right.
So they're like, "Yo, how did he get cocaine?"
Right. Right.
They were sailing.
I mean, I think there were obviously, like I said, tons of different migration patterns before what we consider, or before that history was really being documented, or it is documented and that's just not what people choose to write about and focus on.
Because Columbus, there's even a note in Christopher Columbus's like journals or something where he said when he was in, where was he in? Wasn't he in like Haiti or somewhere? He wasn't like even in the United States. I forget where he was.
But he thought he'd discovered, but he thought it was like the Americas.
Yeah, wherever the hell he was.
Yeah.
There was a journal entry that he had where he said he saw dark-skinned people, black people, when he arrived.
Right.
They were already here.
I mean,
and he wrote that, but they don't talk about that. I
was talking to my friend about this a little while back, not that long ago, but how there's this group of like this ethnic group I think they're primarily in southern Africa, called the San. Or Khoisan, I think is another name for them. And they look super Blasian to me. Like, they're black folks, but they look Asian. They look like they're black and Asian. Yeah. And we were talking about that. And I think there are groups of people like that around the world that somewhere, before way back in the day, there were these groups that were mixing in large numbers, but we just don't talk about that, or maybe that history is being hidden for a reason, or maybe it just hasn't been of interest to white folks who've been the main. Yeah, they're the main ones whose historical narratives we consume. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so, yeah. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, so that's that. Sorry, everybody. We're trying to tame our rabbit hole conversations.
We have to have a few rabbit holes, don't we?
I think that's just who we are. So one of the last things I want to say that we talked about in our off the record or off the podcast conversation was this is a rough segue. Not maybe, I don't know. Where when I ended up marrying my wife, obviously a white woman, and I had to then start to fight against stereotypes about black men and white women.
Right.
And it's all the obvious stuff. Oh, Matt, you want a white woman because she's easy to deal with and she's not going to challenge you. Or you don't value yourself and you think white people are better than black people. And every single stereotype that exists has been thrown at me and her. And then on my wife's side, we would be out in public and she would get lots of dirty stares from black women.
Yeah.
And then black women would look at me and give me a look.
Yeah.
And early on in our relationship, I was uncomfortable early on, and I was doing a lot of defending, myself. Or I would even overcompensate at times my blackness,
Sure. To kind of try to prove you weren't
an Uncle
fitting into
Tom
these
or a
stereotypes.
sellout, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I just wasn't comfortable with what was happening. I loved my wife and everything, all the obvious stuff, but I was still dealing with this other, issue, if you will. All these stereotypes, and after some time, I'm kind of jumping and moving through this really quickly. I just said, "Fuck it."
Yeah.
I was like, "I'm never going to convince everybody. I shouldn't have to convince everybody.
And why do I even care?
Why do
so
I even
much?
care?" And
Yeah.
I'm obviously at that point now, because I'm like, I can't. You're never going to know my motivation. I don't have to tell you my motivation. If I choose to, you do what you want.
And
with
even if
it.
I tell you, you may not believe me.
Right. So
Yeah.
I just had to say, whatever, like, forget it. But that was a real kind of, I don't want to say it was a problem, but it was an issue that we both dealt with.
Yeah.
And we are still kind of dealing with now with family. And I won't get real specific. But there's just these weird stereotypes there. And I look back on that now, and I do think that's very interesting. Because I just remember getting in arguments with people with black people who would try to tell me who I was.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of fights with a lot of people about that. I'm like, how are you act like? And see, I think I'm a smart guy, and so intellectually, it was really difficult for me to try to listen to someone tell me about myself.
Yeah.
I was like, how is this conversation even happening right now?
Yeah.
Like, I'm befuddled. Like, like, what are you talking about? Like, I can't tell you anything about you unless you talk to me.
Right. Right. But you're trying to tell me all about who I am and what motivates me and my intentions.
Yeah, and then the other parts of that we kind of talked about, me and you, was like with some of my black friends and black associates and people I was around. I had to personally fight against some of the stereotypes. Like, I come from middle class America, and some of the black women didn't want to date me because they didn't think I was black enough.
Right.
I spoke too well.
Yeah.
And they looked at that like, oh, you're assimilating.
Right.
And I'm like, am I? Or am I? I just happened to be brought up in that area, and that's how I talked and spoke.
Sure.
But I always tell people now, there's a song that do you listen to Jay-Z ever? Maybe. No.
I mean, I listen to the radio a lot. I often
Okay.
don't know who the actual artists are, though. So maybe I have. I don't know, but not specifically, I guess.
There's this song Jay-Z has, and it's fairly new, and the song is called "The Story of OJ." And the chorus, oh, I wish I could play it for you. Hold on, I'm gonna look it up because I don't want to mess the words up. But you're black no matter what, basically, and
Right.
I feel like hold on one second here. I'm so sorry.
Is it kind of going against that you're not black enough kind of thing?
That's exactly what it is. And when Jay-Z
Okay.
put this song out, I was like, yes, that's what I've been trying to say for years. Okay,
Yeah.
here it goes. Lyrics are light nigga, dark nigga, real nigga, rich nigga, poor nigga, house nigga, field nigga, Still nigga.
Okay. Yeah.
Still nigga.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
would get in these conversations in these arguments with black people where I'm like, yo, why are you fighting me?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I'm going to get shot the way you get shot. Like, none of us is, like, safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and this is another rabbit hole, and I'm not going down it, but I don't know whatever your personal thoughts or feelings are about Michael Jackson. But I think you could argue that Michael Jackson's one of the most famous black people that ever lived. Okay, I don't care how much he bleaches his skin. You're black.
Yeah.
Okay. They come after Michael Jackson. Nobody's safe.
Right.
Okay? Like, no black person is safe.
Yeah. I get where you're coming from. And, this was kind of, I also get that you can have folks that, like you've mentioned the phrase, like the Uncle Toms.
Yes.
Right?
Because they exist.
Those folks exist, right? The Sheriff Clarks.
Asshole.
People that are seen as kind of like race traitors.
Yeah.
Right, that are caping hard for white supremacy in every way, shape, and form, right? Mm-hmm. So I get that exists, right? But I understand where you're coming from, and I actually would kind of I don't want to say got in trouble, but when I was in grad school, right, most of my cohort doing Black studies, most of my cohort were Black Americans, and there were a few times when I pushed back on things in the classroom, and it didn't go over so well.
No, I can't imagine it did.
which sometimes I deserved that. Sometimes it was ignorance on my part, where I understood something but not deeply. I didn't understand something deeply enough yet, and I opened my mouth and stepped into a pile of doo-doo. So sometimes I deserved it. Other times, I think often, it was simply me coming from a different perspective, mm-hmm. right? I'm not Black American. And that was one of the things when you were talking about not being Black enough, that was something that was kind of triggering for me as a mixed race woman, right? Because if there's one thing mixed race folks experience pretty much across the board.
Yeah, you're neither.
It's not being enough. We hear that, we experience that our whole fucking lives, right? Like, you're not enough of this part of your racial and ethnic heritage, and you're not enough of this side. You're never enough of any of your cultures to be fully accepted or fully fit in. And that's hard. Yeah. I mean, that's hard as fuck, right? To constantly be told, to be told in any area of your life that you're not enough, right? That's like damaging, but especially when it's your identity. Right. Like, I think of that as someone constantly telling you you're not man enough or you're not woman enough. It's just deeply damaging. So anyways, when that came up in the classroom, like somebody saying, we were reading a book and somebody made the comment, well, this author, it was a Black man, isn't Black enough. And I was like, I have problems with this phrase, right? Like, because this person was not, I don't think this person falls in the category of like Uncle Tom type thing. I think it was more, they didn't see this person's stances as radical enough. Mm-hmm. Right, they're anti-racist, whatever, as like being radical enough. So that's what they meant by, I think that's what this person meant by saying they're not Black enough. But that was like super, like I said, triggering for me. Not like I went off on that. I don't mean triggering in that way, but I was just like, wait. Okay, so like who, so I kind of like stepped into this discussion of who gets to decide right. who is whatever enough. Right. Like the racial police. Yeah. Right? Like going around, well, let's see. Do you get to keep your Black card? Do you get to keep your like Chinese card? Like, are you enough? Like, who gets to decide what those standards are? So I guess I'm I don't know, like I understand where people are coming from sometimes in making those comments, but
Mm-hmm.
I also disagree to a large extent with the premise of
Yeah.
that.
And this is
Um,
how bad that affected me. Just to give you an example, I I wasn't sure I wanted to marry my wife because she was white.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I had, and she knows this obviously, um, and she asked me to talk about it.
Okay.
So when I fell in love with her, it was like this huge tug of war with myself because people to this day look at me weird and talk to me weird, like because I'm so pro black. I'm so I have these conversations. I'm so all this Black Lives Matter and what I am, and I'm
Yeah,
vocal about who I am, and I'm proud of who I am. But then they see a white woman sitting next to me, and they're like, "What?"
yeah, yeah,
They can't connect the dots. And so I wasn't sure I wanted to marry her, and I had this out with my mom and myself, and I'm just like, I can't do this. Like
yeah.
I can't do this.
Like deal with this judgment and my whole life.
And internally with myself, I'm like, how can I believe what I believe and have the feelings I have about how black people are treated and what white people have done to them that turn to marry a white person? Like
Yeah,
it was attacking, my the love I had for her was being attacked by all these, societal things.
yeah,
And I obviously made the right decision. But it was hard.
yeah,
And I fought with it for a while, and my wife didn't know what I was dealing with because everything was working at the time, when we were kind of dating. And she said there was a period of time where I kind of got quiet, and
yeah.
she said she was going to wait around. She knew what I was waiting on, like I said, or what I was trying to figure out. But she was like, I was waiting around to see what you were going to do, and I knew that
Mm,
you were like in some kind of holding pattern,
struggling. Yeah, yeah,
but didn't
yeah,
know what I was dealing with. And that was rough for me because I had, like, as a kid and well, maybe more so a teenager and a young adult, I had these like fantasies in my head where I was like, man, I'm gonna marry this beautiful black woman, and we're gonna have these amazing kids, and we're gonna be like Afro. It's gonna be amazing, right? But
yeah.
life, obviously,
Afrocentric.
yeah, Afrocentric, like all this
Yeah,
stuff, man. We're gonna go to Africa. It's gonna be amazing, right? And then my wife shows up, and I'm like, as life does, like it never goes
right.
ever the way
The way
you
that you
you want it
plan.
to.
Right, 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 right.
But I just wanted to say that to point out how difficult that was for me, you know, marrying a white woman. But the funny thing about it is, man, have I grown and learned a lot from being in this relationship.
Yeah,
And I think I've grown in a way that I don't know that I would have if I was in a comfortable black marriage.
yeah.
And I don't know how that sounds. And I'm sure if this ever blows up, I'll get shit for saying what I just said. Because I think somebody would try to twist that and say what you're trying to say, a black marriage isn't valuable. No, I'm not saying that.
Well,
I'm saying if you're always in your comfort zone, with whatever it is, you're not being pushed. And so by
right.
being in this marriage, I've been pushed all kind of ways. I'm
Yeah,
getting attacked by my people, by white people. I'm getting it from every angle,
yeah.
and it's made me a stronger person.
Sure. And I mean, I mean, like I said earlier, like people don't realize often, like when I was talking about the white guys like trying to date me, and it's not, again, exclusive to white men, but not realizing all the different factors that go into intercultural relationships. Like I think in this country, because of our history, we have this massive over focus on race, right? On people's physical
Hmm.
racial appearance. And we almost never talk about culture.
Right.
And so like once you get past what comes with racial difference, in almost every single case is cultural differences, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that stuff runs deep. And I think, we've talked about this a little bit. So that's what I was hearing when you said being, and I know a little bit more about you, right? We've talked some now and talked some off the podcast, but just navigating intercultural relationships takes, whether that's on the friendship level but especially on the like intimate, like romantic level, it takes skill and like work and navigation that I think often people don't understand.
No.
That goes into that. If you're truly going to have like a healthy, honest, fully known, equal relationship, I mean, from two people that are coming from very, very different backgrounds and different cultures. I think people love in this country to gloss over. I mean, this is probably, again, mostly white folks, but to kind of gloss over, well, we're all American. We're all American. There's that narrative, right? Well, we're just this big melting pot.
Mm-hmm.
No. Like yes, we're all American, and that gives us some similarities and gives us some commonalities, maybe.
Yeah.
But there's still a huge, difference in experiences and cultures and food and, when I mentioned to you before, this iceberg concept of culture, right? Where at it's like this iceberg where the tip that's showing is like food, music, dance, clothing. But underneath that, there's all these other differences in ways people are raised to think about things.
Yeah.
And I think as a mixed race person, like, I think I can relate to you on some level in saying being a mixed race person has been hard as hell,
mm-hmm.
right? In a lot of ways. Like we've talked about the fluffy, oh, people fetishize you, which isn't a good thing either. But like I've had to navigate multiple cultures in my own home
mm-hmm.
from the day I was born, right? I'm not just dealing with going out there into the world and dealing with people who don't understand me or people but I'm dealing with that in my own family, in my own home. But I'm starting to realize at almost 40 that that's given me a skill set. Yes, it's brought some baggage, some frustrations, but it's also given me a certain set of skills that I don't think, I mean, there's actually studies coming out now about multiracial folks and how we have to develop like different skills because of being mixed race. And so anyways, that's a long spiel, but as I'm hearing you talk about being in this relationship with your wife, and how it's like challenged you and grown you, and like as someone who had parents in an interracial relationship, and as someone who's navigated a ton of those, myself, it's like, like I get that to some degree. I'm not saying I know your relationship with your wife, but you know what I'm saying? Yeah. I get that to some degree on a like visceral level.
Yeah. And I don't want to say I worry, but I'm real curious about how my son's life is going to turn out. I'm almost like observing.
Yeah.
And I do things, I'll say this real quick, like there's a lot of images of black men around the house. Yeah. And that's very much on purpose.
Yeah.
And because I'm like, somebody might say like, were you trying to steer him that way? I'm like, not necessarily, because he's going to get so much of the white image just in society.
Right.
It's just going to be there. Right. So I want to make sure that he, as much as I can, feed him both.
Right.
And it's almost like I'm conducting an experiment where I'm like, I want to see where he lands because he's going to be his own person. And
reality is that your child, I mean, depending on what he looks like physically, phenotypically,
obviously,
but most likely, right? Like the whole legacy of the one drop rule is still very much alive and well today in society for black folks, right? So even if he's So one drop rule, it was during the time, well, like of enslavement of black folks onward, right, all the way through Jim Crow. But it's this rule that, like, quote unquote, if you have like a drop of black blood, then you're considered black.
Okay.
Right. And that was created during the times of enslavement of African folks to bolster, for white folks to be able to put more black folks in the category of, like, to keep them enslaved.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so white men are raping black women, and then there's a mixed race child. Well, that child is considered black because the one drop rule, and therefore that child becomes part of the enslaved population too. Does that make sense? So it
absolutely
benefited white supremacy, right?
Right.
But that lingers today, right? That, like, and I think that's for pretty much all people of color, right? Like, to some degree, right? Like, I can identify as Asian American, but for me to try to identify as white only would be like, not so much, right? But I think that's even stronger for black folks because of that history of the one drop rule. So yeah, so even though he's mixed, it's like society is most likely, unless phenotypically he looks very not black, right? But society is most likely going to relate to him as a black man, right, regardless. And so it makes sense that, yeah, you want to give him, like, those racial mirrors, and you want to give him those images to, like, look up to, right?
Yeah. So yeah, we're just me and her are real conscious of that, and make sure we feed him a balance. And by a balance, I mean there's only black people in the house except for her.
Sorry, Amy.
Because there is no balance, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's
because
never going to be.
Like you said, he's going to get everything, all the white images, white Jesus and white superheroes and white everything,
Speaking
right?
of, there's we had a white Superman pillow. We had a Superman pillow in his crib. And Amy did this. She took it out. She's like, I don't want him going to bed every night looking at white Superman.
Yeah. Hey, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's her doing that.
This is a little bit of a bunny trail again. I know we've already reached our quota of bunny trails for this podcast, but last night I actually stayed up early this morning to an ungodly hour because I saw on Facebook last night that there's this new Netflix series that is.
Which one is it?
Well, it's called Shadow, but it's based in South Africa, and so I kind of I was like, what? Because, like I've mentioned before, I lived there for about a year and a half. I still love, listening to Trevor Noah because he's from South Africa. Like, there's just all these references that I get from having lived there.
It's zebra, not zebra.
Wait, how did you know that? That's awesome.
I love Trevor Noah.
Oh, from Trevor. Okay, yes. Yeah. That's how you say, Zed Africa. Zed, I don't know. Anyways, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm getting off on another running trip. But anyway, so last night I decided to check out this Netflix series, and I freaking lost my mind. It's like a crime show / thriller / kind of a black superhero, but he's not superhero in that he has magical skills really.
Yeah.
But he just is the super awesome person. He's actually an ex-cop who goes vigilante and is still doing good things for mankind. But anyways, it was just super cool to see.
Yeah.
It was black men rescuing other people. And I was like, oh my gosh, we need more of this. It was kind of almost like Black Panther-ish, like the movie. No, I don't want to compare them, but kind of along that line of seeing right? Like black heroes on the screen. And there were just a lot of really cool elements in it. Yeah. I watched like 6 episodes last night. I was up till like
Wow.
4. I know. But I'm like, I almost never get to
Did you see
see
that?
shows from South Africa. So there were all these references that I was just like dying over. It just like brought back so many good memories and references that I got that I was like, I understood that.
Yeah.
So anyways, but yes.
So let me ask you
Yeah,
this.
super important. Yeah.
Let me ask you this, and then we can wrap up here. Have you seen the trailer for it's a Netflix movie, I think, called Someone Great?
No, I have not.
Look that up when you get a second. And me and my wife talked about this for like a half an hour last night. Someone Great stars a Hispanic woman, I believe.
Okay.
Her best friend, a black woman, and the second tier friend, a white woman.
Okay.
And it was hilarious because me and her, we've been talking about this for a while now. We see these trends now, mainly on Netflix, but you start to see it kind of in other media, where, like, especially with romantic comedies, they're like redoing all the romantic comedy stories ever done now with ethnic people. Right?
Yeah, like it's gaining traction.
It's this thing that we keep seeing, and we're like, yeah, that's funny because like 10 years ago, at best, the main lead, if she was a woman of color, her love interest would be a white dude.
Right.
Right? But her love interest is a black dude. And the white person in this film is like kind of like not really there. Like she's there, but
like a sub character kind
super
of thing.
sub character.
Yeah, which always would have been relegated to the person of color.
That would have been the person of color's role.
The sidekick.
Right?
The sidekick role, yeah.
But like the girl's best friend is the black girl. And we're like, so the two main leads are these two women of color.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
the white
yeah.
girl's like kind of the third or the second tier or whatever. And so we notice that a lot, and we see that, and we always comment on it and think it's funny. Or
that's
not
awesome.
ha-ha funny, but, interesting.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I want to ask you one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
What do you think about the movie? And I don't know if you've seen it, Crazy Rich Asians.
You know what? I have not even seen it yet.
What is the title? Does that do anything to you?
I mean, I've read a lot of like commentary. Well, no, I wouldn't say a lot. I've read some commentary about it. I'm always like 6 months to 2 years behind on my like movie consumption. Like I just watched Black Klansman the other day. Like I don't know.
Seen it.
I get into like reading articles and watching documentaries, and I forget to watch like movies sometimes, or I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to focus. So, anyways, but
I guess I'm asking, is it offensive?
Crazy Rich Asians.
The title. It's like that thing that I hate personally, where it's like if you have a black movie about something, it's typically like I know like Black Panther.
Yeah.
Like really.
Like it feels too.
Couldn't just be Panther. Like you know what I mean? Black Panther.
I got you.
Crazy Rich Asians. Why can't it be Crazy Rich their last name? Like I just don't know anybody from the Asian community, and so I'm like, how do you guys feel about that? Like, does that piss you off? Are you proud of it? What is it like?
Most of the feedback, I mean, it's not specifically about the title, but most of the feedback I've heard has been generally good, but it's been along the lines. It's been along the lines of like, yes, some damn representation, right? Like a movie, kind of like what Black Panther did.
So it's a proud thing.
This is a cast of like mostly Asian folks, which almost never happens. And this actually, I don't even know how it did in the box office, but like it did fairly well. And like casting, we've talked about like the emasculation of Asian men, like casting Asian men as like figures of desire. And so like those kind of wins. Not to say that all the feedback I've heard has been good. Like I've heard of some anti-blackness issues in Crazy Rich Asians.
Which you said does exist.
What's that?
I said, which you said does exist.
which does exist.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I haven't heard any feedback specifically on the title. And I guess that doesn't, to me, it doesn't necessarily seem like a problem to me. I mean, I
Okay.
haven't seen the movie yet,
Okay.
like I said, but yeah.
I was just personally curious about that. That's all.
But sometimes those kind of titles do irritate me, depending on what it is. Like I remember one, this is not quite the same, I guess, but I remember one called The Grace Card. It was this was a long time ago, like some super cheesy religious movie, that obviously the title was a play on the race card, but it was The Grace Card. And I was just like, what the fuck do you have to do? No, that's too much. Like,
Yeah,
that's too much.
That's ridiculous.
So, but I want to just make another comment too before we wrap up here.
Yeah, go ahead.
That I kind of, we went past it. But just, the whole, like you talking about that internal struggle with your, about, being with your wife or girlfriend or whatever she was at the time because she's white. Like I've seen that in a lot of, I think especially activist circles, and I use the term activist like loosely, just people that care a lot about anti-racism work. I've seen people that don't want to partner with a white person. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that can go into that, right? Like some of it might be just navigating the intercultural issues or not being on the same page as far as issues of race. But I think some of it is feeling like their work will be discredited, right? Or somewhat discredited if people find out they're with a white partner. And that does happen, and so I think, we've talked about over the course of these last couple, podcasts, and we've talked about some of the funky ways people can be coming at interracial relationships, whether you're white or you're a person of color. We've talked about the fetishes. We've talked about a lot of different things. And so, but I think, my personal, I guess, I don't know what you want to call it, but personal thoughts, or it's just, as long as those funky things aren't there, the fetishizing and all of that, at the end of the day, like, love is hard enough. Like a healthy, awesome relationship
right, it's hard enough as it is.
Fucking hard enough to find. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, if that person ends up being whoever, whatever race or whatever gender or whatever sexual orientation or what, like, like be with that person, again, as long as that funky stuff isn't there. It's just like, I don't, be with who you want to be with, because, I've thought about this in relation to my own life as a white Chinese person, depending on who I end up partnering with, if I ever find someone, that's an if, but I'm going to get sideways looks.
You're going to get it regardless.
It's
just going to happen.
But I can't make my life. I can't, they're either going to be judging him. Oh, you want to be with like a light girl, or you want to be with a mixed girl, or they're going to be judging me, like for, who I'm with. And so it's just like, at the end of the day, I think we got to do our inner work to make sure that we're not coming from some funky place, and then, be with who you want to be with, because like I said, it's hard enough to find, I think, an awesome relationship, and, so just do you, I guess, to be super cliche about it. And I also kind of related with what you were saying. Like, I get all kinds of weird looks having majored in what I majored in. I majored in African American and African studies as a Asian mixed race woman, right? Asian and white woman. And, I get people looking at me sideways, not knowing where I'm coming from. Like, am I just studying Black people as some sort of weird, intellectual fetish kind of thing? Like, oh, I just like studying you all, but I don't really care about issues that impact Black people's lives, or do I have a fetish for Black men, or do I, like, I get people that ask me these questions, like, why are you doing what you're doing? And so I guess I've kind of come to expect that, and just be like, well, people, I'll either pass their test or I won't, or whatever, but I can't waste all my energy. You know what I'm saying? Like, trying to prove myself to other people. Like, either it will become clear to you that I do have, good intentions, or maybe you'll decide that I don't. And either way, it's like, I'm just like, I'm going to focus on doing my work and doing my inner work and doing the anti-racism work that I can, and knowing who I am. And, not everybody's going to like you, no matter who you are.
Yeah.
Like, not everybody's going to like you. Not everyone is going to be cool with you. And so, I just think, yeah.
I feel like this
I just
podcast
resonated.
I feel like this podcast is like therapy.
For us.
Like, are we doing the podcast, or are we just, we got each other on the couch? Just.
Did I get too therapeutic for you?
Tell me about your childhood. No, I'm making light of a very serious, thing.
But I mean, we live in a society that has this crazy racial history, this horrific racial history, and that continues to play out, right?
Yeah.
Like, that continues to play out. But I think at the end of the day, like, I don't know. For me, anyways, like you said, the older you get, the more you're just like, I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea. So why should I even try?
Don't even try.
I'm just going to do my thing. And if you like me, great. If you trust me, great. If you don't, that's just that. I don't love that, but it's just how things are going to go, So anyways, okay. Therapy session over.
Yeah. I think that's a good stopping point. A lot of good topics. I think this is really good. Next week, I think I'm with another guest. Let me make sure. That is
The 17th, 16th?
Yeah.
17th.
Okay, so for all you that love Leah, she won't be with us next week, but she'll be back the week after that. So don't flip out, okay?
For all of you who hate her, you get a break. See, not everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah.
Be happy next week.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have a conversation with an artist I work with, and we're gonna talk about hip hop, not in so much in the musical aspect, but more as the cultural, in a cultural way, and I think that'll be interesting.
That's an awesome topic. I love that.
Yeah. So like I was saying at the beginning of the podcast, I tell everybody, if you're enjoying this podcast, we want to grow it. Please share it with your friends and family. You're welcome to repost anything we post. I think you put it on your Facebook, Leah, and just help us grow it if you can, so we can become rich and famous, and we can come to your city and talk to you.
So I can be a crazy rich Asian.
Oh shit!
Yes, I win.
Well, you just had that tucked away.
We just talked about it.
I know. You're a quick one.
I learned from the best.
Oh shit.
All right. Well, it's been fun.
Yeah. As always, I'll talk to you real soon.
Okay, sounds great. Have a great weekend.
All right, you too.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, so really enjoyed that podcast. Got to go ahead and unleash and unload some personal things about ourselves. I'm gonna go ahead and send us off here with another playlist shuffle. Don't hurt me. Don't hurt me.